So I'm here with the legendary Dr. Paul McCutheon, who's been a veterinary for over 40 years. He's also been a former director with the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association and a president of the Toronto Academy Veterinary Association. Right now, he's a current director here at the East York Animal Clinic, where I love the options that they offer here. You are a man of great accomplishments. He's authored several magazine articles and journals, including his book, The New Holistic Way for Dogs and Cats. Not to mention, he's been a personality on television and radio. So thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So what prompted you to take on the more holistic approach to animal health care?
Well, you know, I've been in practice actually 52 years.
Woo!
And it's a long time. But the first 20 years, I ran a very conventional practice right here. And it was a quite successful practice. But particularly since I was getting involved in the media, I started to look at what I was doing. I started to think about how I would approach veterinary medicine a little differently. And I thought there was something lacking. There was something, the perspective of how to handle things was somewhat flawed. And I thought we could do more for our patients. So I started looking at all the other things that we could do. I'm talking about acupuncture and homeopathy and herbal medicine and things like orthomolecular nutrition. These are the things that started to come into my life around that time. And of course, I changed the way I thought about things. So the holistic philosophy is a little bit different. The way you look at things. And that has made a tremendous change in my life. And over the last 30 odd years now, I've been in the field of the holistic approach, philosophically.
Wow, was there like a specific turning point that made you go?
Right when I was doing my television show with TV Ontario, I was the writer and the host of that show, and I had to get the participants, and I got participants that were oriented toward the holistic field.
That is interesting.
And then that really excited me, and I got involved because of that. It's just an evolution, actually. It's not something that happened bang.
Right.
You evolve into things, but certainly by opening up your mind to things really makes a difference in the long run, and it has been a tremendous journey for me in the holistic field.
Ooh, high five. High five. Now, do you find pet owners come here already educated on the different modalities? Or?
Oh yeah, now they do, and there's been a big change over the last 30 years. 30 years ago, I was the oddball out. You know, I mean, I was really out of my comfort zone and the comfort zone of many of my colleagues. I mean, I lost friends, I lost clients over my change in my philosophy.
Wow.
Because it was really shunned upon by most of the general public now.
Right.
Now you look at it, it's a very different situation where there's much more broader perspective on health and well-being, and the holistic field is not looked upon quite the way it used to be.
Right. Still a little bit, but it's a lot better now.
That's right.
What top, say, 3 tips do you have for pet owners that are constantly worrying about their pet's happiness and health?
Well, I think that's just that. I think that they should open up their minds to try to realize what we really want to do is to empathy. Put them in our perspective so that you really have a feeling for what they're going through. And that includes all of the health factors, but wellness factors as well. Sometimes we lose a perspective on how they feel about being fed the same old thing, or the medications that are often so unnecessary that we give them. And these things are really important in their health and well-being, to moderate these things and understand what they're going through. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing, and of course this is a lot of our education goes into getting people to understand the principles of the holistic philosophy, where we're trying to get our patients to heal themselves rather than impose invasive medications on them.
Thank
and that's
you.
the whole philosophy.
Thank you.
In a nutshell, is the holistic philosophy versus the conventional approach to things.
Is that the main synopsis that you wrote about in your
That's
book?
basically it. The new holistic way, of course, the new is something that the new holistic way is not just looking at holistic as something weird, but it's part of the whole context of health and well-being. So consequently, when we talk about the holistic approach to things, it may include antibiotics and steroids and drugs, because that's part of the broad picture. If you just confine yourself to thinking about individual things, in other words, conventional medicine is very confining in the fact that you're just using drugs to make body changes. Whereas the holistic philosophy, of course, says, okay, well, we're going to get the patient to make those changes. And we have a variety of different ways of doing that. And that's what's so exciting about the holistic field. It opens up so many more modalities, healing methods, that otherwise are being neglected in the conventional approach.
Love that. Stress, health, connection. There's a connection.
Well, the stress thing is very important because stress is paramount in their well-being.
Yeah.
And that's why the stress-health connection comes in. That originally is how I got going onto the whole field, was studying stress. And that was in the late 70s and early 80s when I was doing my television show. And I looked upon stress as a big entity. Well, part of handling that stress is looking at it from the holistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
And that's how we
get
start getting into, well, what else can we do? How can we handle stress better?
Right.
And the stress can be handled better in many ways by the holistic approach of using different modalities.
Right. Speaking of stress, I foster dogs for rescues, and it's sad to see some of their stories.
Well, that's something we run into a lot.
So how do you feel treating animals
Well,
like that?
I mentioned the empathy thing. People have to understand what they've been through, or try to understand what they have really been through. And if the dogs or the cats have been through a lot of distressing situations, it's going to take time to recover. So there is a commitment when you start adopting dogs. You have to try to do things with that in mind, that they have been through a lot of trauma. And it will take some orientation, some serious orientation toward getting them better.
Thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time. Check out his book, The New Holistic Way for Cats and Dogs.